and we were just talking about the situation in Rafah, or the impending situation there. Oh, very noisy background there.
Very noisy background.
Sorry, there's a bike going past.
Sorry, but, you know, as a government minister, I would say the first thing you should put on statute books is a ban on anybody that drives anything as noisy as that. But look, David Cameron, Lord Cameron, has already expressed a deep worry over what the Israeli military plan in Rafah. Would you like to add to that?
So look, I think first of all, we're all deeply concerned about what we're seeing in Gaza. I mean, the human suffering is really quite terrible, and the number of Palestinians who sadly lost their lives in recent operations is really very sad. But we've also seen last night the release of 2 hostages, which demonstrates that very sadly the Israelis have got a point in trying to rescue their citizens from this terrible situation. There's still some 100 Israeli citizens being held hostage now for well over 100 days. And this absolutely vile crime that Hamas committed on October the 7th is still leaving many, many families grieving, and of course many, many suffering, both Israeli and Palestinian. So I think we're all hoping that this will end, and end very soon. What we hope for now is a pause to get aid in, and the British government has been extremely clear in our aims to get aid and support into the Palestinian people, and to end the suffering as quickly as possible.
Tom, but the thing is, there's about 1.5 million displaced people in Rafah, and it's the gateway in and out of Gaza. Where the heck do these people go for safety?
Well, that's why we've got to get support in, we've got to get aid in, and you know, this is, as you know, Rafah is on the borders with Egypt, and the Egyptian government has been very important in supporting those Palestinians in need and making sure that those who need assistance can get it as quickly as possible. So this is something that the Israeli government and the Egyptian government have got to work on together, and the international community has a responsibility in making sure that this action, whatever it is as brief as possible and commits, causes as little harm as possible. But the reality is we have seen terrible suffering in Gaza in recent months, all of it caused by this horrific terrorist attack on Israel that happened on the 7th of October, and all of it brought about by people in the Hamas leadership, billionaires living in different places around the Middle East, who think nothing of the lives of the Palestinian people and only about their own wealth and their own security.
Mr. Tugendhat, as a military man yourself, you've served in Iraq and Afghanistan. I believe you're still an Army Reserve officer. I did want to get your thoughts on the comments from Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, who says woke extremists are rife in the Army. I mean, right now, with the state of our world, the global angst that we're all experiencing, surely this country should be doing everything in its power to ensure that we have a credible fighting force that our opponents around the world fear.
Well, look, let's be absolutely clear. We're seeing huge instability around the world. We've just spoken about the Middle East, and Royal Naval ships are engaged in actions against the Houthis in the Red Sea. And we know that the vicious war that Vladimir Putin is waging in Ukraine could escalate and is absolutely horrific, costing many, many lives even now. This is a time when only our enemies want us to be divided, and we have absolutely no time for this sort of putting ideology before security. It is absolutely clear, and let me be totally clear, there is no way we are going to be easing up security requirements for ideological requests. That's simply not going to happen. You know, the British Armed Forces have one purpose and one purpose alone, and that's to defend the British people and bring death to the King's enemies. There's no way we're going to be putting ideology before security.
Let's turn to digital security now, which is the reason you're here to talk about this. We hear there's been an almost 8-fold increase in fraud offences. What are you planning to do about this? How are you planning to clamp down on this?
Well, look, Eamon, we've all seen, sadly, an escalation in fraud. As more of our lives have gone online, I suppose it's in one way not surprising, but that doesn't make it right. And that's why we're working with tech firms, telecoms firms, the police, and with the Great British public to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. Now, today's announcement is about empowering people. That's why we're calling it Stop Think Fraud, because there's various different ways in which we can protect ourselves and make ourselves a harder target. But this doesn't stand alone. We've also been blocking the various different ways in which fraudsters are attacking us. That's why working with tech firms to stop these SIM farms that send out spam messages is so important, and why we've actually led the world with our online fraud charter in getting tech firms to play their part in stopping fraud on their platforms. Now, it's also true that we need police support. And this morning, with your Cameron people, I was out at a raid in a home in Chingford where we saw an arrest on somebody who had SIM farms in their home. Now, we'll see what happens as the different processes of the law enforcement play their part, but it's absolutely clear that we need to be taking very clear action against this. We need to be making sure that we empower people, we block attempts, and we pursue those who are attacking us.
Just explain that to me again. You said they have what in their homes, did you say?
SIM farms. So those SIM farms are basically, if you like, an array of mobile phone masts, which means that your computer can send out multiple messages at the same time.
Interesting, interesting. One of the things, I know when you're talking to tech firms, just one of the things I would say, Minister, is why do they need so much information from us all the time? That, for instance, if we go to purchase something, you can't progress down the line to make an order unless you give your email, your phone number, just lots of things. I don't know about you, Ellie, but I think, what do they want to know that for?
Personal information.
Well, and then it means that somebody's got all this info, and then someone has the ability to maybe access, hack, or steal that information.
Well, Eamon, that's where you've got to make a judgment, and that's why that information campaign that we're running today is so important. Because when we say stop, think fraud, what we mean is think about how people are collecting your data and how you're protecting it. Are you using the same password for everything? If you are, that's not very safe. Are you using two-factor authentication? Are you making sure, therefore, that there's an extra step? It's not just a password. Are you actually thinking, is this the kind of a site that I should trust, or is it a link that somebody has emailed me and therefore that I should be more careful about? So that's why all of these elements are about stopping, thinking about what you're doing, and thinking that some of these actions sadly may be fraudulent.
I can tell, talking to you, that you now think about this. This is uppermost in your mind, so it's
great ideas.
Yeah, I can tell that.
Yeah.
Ellie.
Minister, whilst we've got you, I wanted to ask you about a report that we've got out today from our reporter revealing that 1 in 10 residents on the Bibby Stockholm are attending church services and converting to Christianity in record numbers. Now, of course, this has all been thrown into the spotlight, hasn't it, with Abdul Azidi, who was rejected twice for asylum, accepted on the third time after converting to Christianity. There is this pray-to-stay loophole in the system at the moment, isn't there, Minister? Does religion need to be taken out of asylum claims? Because there are calls for that to happen.
So let's just be clear, that's not quite right. It's certainly true that all factors are taken into consideration in an asylum claim. That is true. What is not true is that conversion to Christianity is an immediate sort of, right to stay. That's not correct. It is one of many factors that put into place. And actually, I was very interested to read the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey's article in the newspaper this weekend, where he was talking about the role that the Church of England has to play, not just in recognising conversions correctly, after all they are a missionary church, but also in recognising that conversion has to be real and therefore, what are the steps towards baptism and so on. Now, I think that's a matter for the Church of England, not for me, but I tell you what is a matter for the Home Office, and that's making sure that any fraudulent claims are denied and that all circumstances are looked at. So if somebody converts literally the day before their asylum hearing and after they've had several refused attempts, well, maybe that's a consideration that should be looked at very carefully.